Welcome to the amazing Historical Facts channel. Be sure to subscribe to channel so you don't miss more videos like Joseph Goebbels and the Eyes of Hate. Moments before this photograph was taken at a League of Nations meeting in Geneva, Switzerland in September 1933, Nazi propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels was all smiles and cheers. But once he discovered that the man taking his picture was Jewish, his expression changed to the one you see here, known as the Eyes of Hatred. The last photo of the victim of the Witch Girls killer, before he dragged 19-year-old Judy Dahl into the Mojave Desert to strangle her, Harvey Glatman took this photo of her for his collection. Known as the Glam Girl Killer, the serial killer of the 1950s posed as a photographer and targeted aspiring actresses in Hollywood, taking their photos before killing himself. 19th century Siberian bear hunting suit. Made for hunting Siberian bears in the 19th century, this suit is made of quilted leather with hundreds of 1-inch iron spikes adorning its exterior, and is said to be the only one of its kind to have actually survived a bear attack. Dracula's Castle. Located in Transylvania, Bran Castle is widely known as Dracula's Castle. While the famous vampire is of course fictional, this castle does have some historical connections to the Wallachian conqueror Vlad the Impaler, also known as Vlad Dracula, the bloodthirsty tyrant who is widely credited as the inspiration for Dracula. This photo shows the children of Lucille Chalafou, a 24-year-old mother who was pregnant with her 5th child. Chalafou and her husband, Ray, were facing eviction from their Chicago apartment in 1948. The prospect of homelessness and many mouths to feed prompted the parents to auction off their children. Within 2 years, the 4 children shown here had been sold or donated to other homes. Artist George Grosz, dressed as the Grim Reaper, 1919. A German artist prominent in the Dada and New Objectivity movements of art in the early 20th century, George Grosz was particularly interested in depicting despair, hate, and disillusionment. Robert Overacker, as his parachute failed to deploy. At Niagara Falls, 1995, the parachute failed to open fully. Overacker fell 180 feet and was pronounced dead by Niagara Hospital that same year. A whale's remains in Alaska, 1910. The whale in this photo is not beached but tied up at the Tyee Company whaling station, which processed whales from 1907 to 1913. The area is actually known as Murder Cove, not because of the whales butchered there, but because of the slaying of 2 prospectors in 1869. Victorian trick. Photography. Trick photography was all the rage during the Victorian era. Faux decapitations in particular were quite popular, and there are many surviving photos to prove it. A pile of bison skulls. 1892. The pile of bison skulls in this photo was taken at the Michigan Carbon Works in Rougeville and were to be processed and used to make products such as bone glue, fertilizer, bone ash, and bone charcoal. Inger Jacobsen and Jackie Heine Bülow Janssen, 1954. This photo may seem strange, but it actually represents another day in the life of singer Inger Jacobsen and her husband Jackie Heine Bülow Janssen. Jacobsen was a popular singer in her native Norway. She even represented her country in the Eurovision Song Contest in 1962. Blanche Monnier, after being locked in an attic for 25 years, 1901. Considered a great beauty and courted by many hopeful suitors, Blanche Monnier hailed from a respected bourgeoisie family in Poitiers, France. When she fell in love with a man her mother disapproved of, her mother locked her in a small attic room, confining her to a bed for the next 25 years of her life. The mother, Louise Monnier, and Blanche's brother Marcel pretended that Blanche had perished. In May 1901, the Paris Attorney General received an anonymous letter that revealed Blanche's terrible condition. "I speak of a spinster who is locked up in Madame Monnier's house, half-starved and living on a putrid litter for the past 25 years. The letter read, though who wrote it is still a mystery. When Blanche Monnier was rescued by the police, she weighed 55 pounds, and her little room was filled with rotten food and crawling with vermin. Blanche's mother was arrested and perished soon afterward. Her brother was deemed mentally ill. British Army cadets, in different forms of camouflage, 1943. This photo, taken June 17, 1943, comes from the collection of the Imperial War Museums. In a note written by a Sergeant Hardy, these cadets are learning the different ways of camouflaging and concealment. Thousands of wedding rings from Holocaust victims, 1945. A few of the thousands of wedding rings the Germans removed from their victims to salvage the gold. U.S. troops found rings, watches, precious stones, eyeglasses, and gold fillings near Buchenwald concentration camp. The embalmed body of Julia Pastrana died. 1860. Julia Pastrana was born in Mexico in 1834, and while details of her early life vary, she was part of a touring freak show. Pastrana had hypertrichosis, a condition that caused thick hair to grow all over her body. She also had thick lips and gums due to gingival hyperplasia. Collectively, these conditions led to her being called a link between mankind and the orang-outang, and the ugliest woman in the world. Pastrana was a popular attraction who sang and displayed an amiable and intelligent nature. She married her manager Theodore Lent in 1859 and became pregnant soon after. Her son perished shortly after birth, and his mother soon followed. After the passing of mother and son, Lent had both of their bodies embalmed and put on display. They arrived at the University of Oslo at some point during the 1970s, were stolen in 1976, and later recovered, although the child's body was badly damaged. In 2013, Pastrana was finally transported back to Mexico for burial. The wreck of the RMS Titanic, 2004, the most famous shipwreck of all time. Built in Belfast, Northern Ireland, and completed in May 1911, the luxury passenger liner was dubbed unsinkable. That proved fatally inaccurate on April 15, 1912, when it struck an iceberg on its maiden voyage and sank to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. More than 1,500 passengers and crew lost their lives that night, and the tragedy of the Titanic has been retold in countless works. Today, the wreckage is a legally protected site, prohibiting anyone from conducting any research, exploration, salvage, or other activity that would physically alter or disturb the wreck or wreck site. Evidence of a slaughter. Of quail, 1914. 4 men, at least 3 rifles, 1 car, and a host of small game birds hanging from the side of the ladder as trophies. This was the slaughter of quail in Texas in 1914. Included in a lecture series about theory and practice of wildlife preservation, this photo is meant to demonstrate the dangers of such a practice. According to the publication, quail were among the bird species that waged war on the cotton boll weevil, an insect that wrought havoc on crops in Texas. Despite this, the mass killing of quail was undertaken such that it almost concealed from end to end a large car. As soon as the quail were thinned out, the cotton boll weevil crossed over the line and a loss of $25 million per year began on the cotton crop. A makeshift hospital. In the Vietnam War, 1970, Korean mother embraces her son, a prisoner of war who escaped his North Korean POW camp. Shortly after the signing of the Korean Armistice Agreement, which ended the widespread fighting of the Korean War, 1953. The Queen Consort of Mongolia, Genapil in Mongolia, the last queen consort, and married to the Bogd Khaganate, Bogd Khan, until his death. On April 17, 1924, when the monarchy was abolished. She was killed during the Stalinist purges in May 1938. Photograph dated January 1, 1923. Kubrick taking a photo with daughter Vivian on the set of The Shining. Nicholson thought. He himself was the photo's subject. 1980.